didn't really get into football until I was about 9 years old, 10 years old. Me getting stabbed at 16, really woke me up. Scoring 15 goals from midfield, getting the team promoted, getting a promotion to the Premier League, it's a season that I'll never forget.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Daily Coaching Podcast, where we talk to players, managers and specialists within the industry. And I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by a very, very special guest. This player has played for Leeds United, Norwich City, Derby County, and is currently playing at Blackburn Rovers. I'm absolutely delighted to announce my very special guest, Bradley Johnson. Bradley, first of all, massive thank you for taking the time to join me today. I'm really excited to have you on here. And with all of my guests, I always get them to take it back all the way to the start of the journey. So if you can, how did you get into football and how did that sort of progression kind of start out?
Going back some time now. Now, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this. Going all the way back, I think, surprisingly, I always liked football from a young age, like any kid does growing up, always wanted to be. But I didn't really get into football until I was about 9 years old, 10 years old. Before that, I've got an older brother who, as you do, you look up to. And he was in a motorbike display team called the Imps in London. So I went to follow in his steps. So still to this day. And yeah, I wanted to join that team. So I joined that team when I was 5 years old. We travelled around the world, doing shows all over the country, all over the world. Stunts on motorbikes, it was.
Nice.
And so that took up my weekends as a kid. We were going there on a Saturday and we were doing shows on a Sunday. And then when I started getting into football at like 9, although I did love football while I was doing that, but I joined a team when I was 9 years old called Interwood down in East London. And obviously the two collided on a Saturday where I had games and stuff on a Sunday. So it was at about 9 or 10, my dad, I'd say 9, I think dad sat me down and just said to me, look, what do you want to do? Because you can't do both. So at that age, I chose football, which was obviously the right thing to do now. My brother was still in the team for another after I finished football. But I was in that motorbike team for 4 years and then chose football at 9 years old. So, as I said, I joined my local team called Interwood. Then we had a really good team. I played up front as well as a kid, which surprises a lot of people. Scored lots of goals. But we had a good team. I think we were one of the best in the borough at the time. We had in my team was Charlie Daniels, who made it at Bournemouth and stuff. Colin Kazim Richards, who's a good friend of mine who plays for Derby now. And yeah, we won everything as kids growing up there. And I think there were seasons where I think I spent 2 seasons there and I scored like 50 plus goals for that team. And got scouted at 10 by Arsenal. And obviously, I'm an Arsenal fan still at being scouted by your team that you support. Being asked to go down there, training. I remember it was at the JBC Centre at Highbury, the old Highbury, going down there. And at 10 years old, they offered me a contract, 2-year contract. So I was over the moon. So I signed for Arsenal then. I spent 5 years at Arsenal as a youth team player. And again, had some good players in my team at the time. But at 15 years old was when they were handing out the YTSs. And I didn't get one. They released me when I was 15. So it was good being at my boyhood club, but that rejection when I got released, really knocked my confidence. And at 15, I tried to go other clubs on trial. I went Watford, I went Charlton, but by that time they already had their scholars or YTs that they gave their contract to, so they couldn't get anywhere. And that knocked my confidence, and I sort of fell out of love of football at that age because I was just scared of rejection. Being Arsenal and being a young kid, as young kids do now, you think that's it. You think you've made it, and you think this is what I'm going to do. And that's what happened to me. I thought I was going to be there for the rest of my life. I was going to play for Arsenal, and happy days, but it wasn't to be.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's interesting as well because it seems to have all happened in quite a quick like amount of time? Because obviously you made that decision, like you said, when you was 9 to go into a team, and I'm very similar. Like, I don't know if it's the same for you, but I know, like, so I grew up in Deptford, Southeast London, and there was only one like local club which was there. It was a team called Red Lions, and I think throughout that period of time, I think people like Jason Eward played there. I think Rio Ferdinand played there for a little while, but there was only really that team, and you kind of think to yourself, like, you know, it's an okay team to be in. But similar to what you just mentioned, I knew that, yeah, Colin Kazim-Richards, like you said, Charlie Daniels, and I think Ryan Smith was there as well, the one who was at Arsenal.
Yeah, Ryan, I played with Ryan at Arsenal, yeah.
Yeah, so like that was a quality team, with yourself included. Did you know at that time how good the team was? Because from your point of view, you just said, like, you know, you want to play football, so you went to a team. But did you know how good that team was when you was actually there, or did you just, because obviously London's massive?
Yeah. Oh, well, no, honestly, I didn't know how good it was. You said it happened quick, so we got. I'm not sure we had a team when I joined. I think we were just training, and then Trevor Bailey made up Gatewood. It happened so fast. We got a name for ourselves so quick. You know, I think we won the London Borough finals. We were going to tournaments, and you know, we had obviously five-a-side tournaments. You can only have a five-a-side team, so we were making up two teams. We would always win every tournament we went to. We were going all over, and there were some other good teams. I always this conversation when I put stuff on my Instagram. You know, players who used to play for other teams, like the picture I put up last week about being at Intwood and being the best team in London. You know, Mark Wright used to play for Ridgeway.
Yeah.
Sorry. And they were a team. We had some tough games against them. You know, you had Redbridge, you had Ridgeway, you had Harrogate Borough, who were very good at that time. I think if you spoke to anyone our age around East London, you also had, like you said, Rio played for Semrab, and my cousin played for Semrab as well. Yeah. So they was a good team up in East London. So you had a lot of good teams, but I think my age, my year group that I had at Interwood, I think we were good, and we didn't know we were going to be that good. But I think, you know, the kids that we had in our team, we were a very good team. We went everywhere. And we won a lot of stuff.
Yeah, nice. It's interesting as well, because I do think that, like you said, that especially with the players that you've mentioned, and you know that East London does have a real close affinity with bringing through quality players. And I think especially nowadays as well, people tend to think of that within South London. Obviously, I looked at the England under-21 squad the other day, and the amount of players from London, let alone South London, that are actually in that, it's crazy, the amount of players. Growing up in London, do you feel that there's, like, sometimes people say that, you know, there's barriers or there's sort of like challenges coming through London, but then at the same time, when I've spoken to other players, they've been jealous of the people from London because of just the amount of teams that there are. And I'm talking obviously professional or academy teams, whereas, say, for example, if you're somewhere out near Cambridge, you're so limited with the amount of teams. What kind of challenges or barriers did you find coming through London? Because obviously you've been successful within that short amount of time, and obviously in your career as well.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you mentioned Cambridge, because that's where I went after I got released from Arsenal. I went there after spending 2 years out of football. But I think, yeah, when we were playing in East London, you know, you like in all parts of London. I'm saying East London because I'm from East London myself. But you know, all over London, you go to places and there are rough estates, and it's just kids who just love football, and I think that was our outlet, playing football and enjoying it. You know, we come from rough estates. I grew up in a rough estate. You know, you come from a rough estate, and you know your outlet is football. So we were tarnished with that brush of oh yeah, London kids have got an attitude and all that. But I think that's why so many people from London made it, because that hard upbringing and the hard, I wouldn't say hard upbringing, but you know, to survive in the days of London, you know what it's like. It is tough, and you have to be have your wits about you. But I think that fighting attitude and determination that a lot of London kids have sort of helped us in a way, built us up for, I'd say, not the rejection, but you know, the fighting spirit. Because you know, even when I've been at clubs before where, as you said, Cambridge and Norwich, and when London kids come up on trial from London, you can just see the fight in them. They want it more, and I'm not saying there's anything bad about not growing up in London, but you just said there, like areas like Cambridge, it's not really tough, and the kids there don't really know what the upbringing like was for the kids from London, where we had to fight for everything really. And the thing with London as well, you're going from, me being from East London, you go into North London. Say for us, for instance, we used to go to Broadwater Farm, and it's a rough estate, and parents were getting in fights, kids were getting in fights, and that's just how it was growing up in London. Tournaments, I think as a kid going to tournaments, you saw more fights with parents and adults more than you did. Parents were that emotional about the game and obviously protecting their kids. There was fist fights with parents at tournaments, which would probably be unheard of in areas like, you say, Cambridge and stuff like that, But I think going through that at such a young age and seeing that and having that, I think that installed that sort of mentality that I still live to this day. I work hard. I know where I come from and how hard it was for my parents to bring up three kids in East London, and I'll never forget that. So I think that's always stuck with me, and that's helped me along my journey. I've never forgot where I've come from. I know I'm lucky enough to be in a position I am now, and it was challenging for us London kids, but I think that's a major part in our armory that we've took into football. That fighting attitude and working hard.
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, I agree with what you're saying about, like you said, you always stay true to your roots. And I think that's credit to yourself. And it's interesting because I always talk about one of the big key factors within, I say making it, but helping you along that journey is opportunity. And so often that's never in your control. Like, especially say, for example, typically within London, there's so many stories you hear about, and obviously even in my time when I was younger as well, just opportunities to actually get along to training sessions. Like we said, some of these typical areas outside of London, it's not to knock them, but their parents will happily travel them all over the country. Whereas in London, people may not have access to cars. People may be from families which are, and I'm going to put in inverted commas, broken, but just having one family member there and not both. So it's challenging in that sense. But I agree with you. I think that there's almost more of a burning desire to actually say, do you know what, this has happened, but that's my actual trigger to think, do you know what, I'm going to actually push harder to go and make it. And especially with like trials as well. And it was something I wanted to pick up on your journey. The amount of players that I went to school with who had trials for Millwall, Charlton, Crystal Palace, Tottenham at times. And they'd be there, say, for example, for a week's trial or 2 weeks trial. They get given the kit. They'd be told, come in on trial, play a couple of games, and then that's it. And they're left like out to dry. So for your instance, where you've then been on the journey for quite a while, like you said, we've been Arsenal for 5 years, to all of a sudden then, like you said, be kind of, pushed out to the side. And then it's like, what do I do now? Because that's been your life for the last 5 years. How did you kind of get yourself mentally back into it to think, do you know what, this has happened, but I'm now going to go on and push and go into the game to an extent?
Yeah, very hard. It was hard. I remember that phone call. Liam Brady phoned my dad. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in my front room and, we was waiting for the calls or the letters that come. And Liam Brady phoned my dad, and he answered the phone. And I could just tell from my dad's reaction it wasn't good news. Yeah. And it was hard. It was heartbreaking. And I lost interest. I'm not going to lie. I lost interest in football after that because, as you just said there, that's all I dreamed of and that's what I thought I was going to be. I tried to go back to, as I said there, I tried to go and try other places that didn't work. That rejection again even gave me another knockback. Yeah. And the rejection was what hurt me the most. I didn't get into any academy clubs. My dad's just said to me, why don't you go back to Interwood? Yeah. So I bit the bullet. I went back to Interwood. But then again, because I left there when I was 10 years old, went back there when I was 15, 16, some of the boys were still there. So when I went back there, they, not just them, everyone, the parents and everyone in the area, Bradley Johnson, came back to Interwood. I had an expectation because I've been at Arsenal for so long. they expected me to go there and be the best player, be what I left, scoring so many goals. And when I left in it, well, I was a striker. But when I went to Arsenal, I played left wing, centre midfield, and left back. So I wasn't a striker at Arsenal. I never played striker at Arsenal. I've always played on the left wing or mid. So I went back to Interwood, and one of the reasons Arsenal released me as well because they said I was too small at the time, and I was. I didn't have a growing spurt until I was about 17.
Yeah.
So growing up at 14, 13, I was so small compared to the other lads in the academy. Everyone else was 6 foot, bloody 15 years old. Like you see kids now at 15, 14, they're huge. And I was the smallest out of our group. So I went back to Interwood again, being one of the smallest. And I wasn't that player I was when I left. So the expectation of me going back there and, going from academy football back to grassroots football, it was a lot harder. Like everyone was a better player, and that wasn't like that. It was more physical, and I just found it hard, and that knocked my confidence as well. So I went back there. Hard. Everyone expected me, so I was. So confidence, and then going back to growing up in secondary school. I found it hard in secondary school. Not found it hard, but I had problems where teachers always envied me being at Arsenal. My PE teacher, because I couldn't play for the school football team, he didn't like me. And I'm not going to sit here and say I wasn't an angel in school. Everyone was in trouble. I say, so what? I'll get in trouble with Arsenal. I had that sort of, as anyone would, where every time I got in trouble, got to school, I would go and train with Arsenal. So it wasn't a punishment for me getting suspended. So every time I got in trouble. And it got to a point where whenever I was bad at school, instead of the school calling my mum and dad, they would call Arsenal. Wow. So I was misbehaving at school, getting in trouble, and my was calling Roy Massey at Arsenal and telling them I'm not behaving, and they wanted Arsenal to punish me. So it sort of went against me, and the school wanted Arsenal to punish me, stop me from playing football, and so I was misbehaving at school, getting in trouble from my school, then getting in trouble at Arsenal because I was behaving in school. And then after that, my mum and dad were finding out, and then I was getting in trouble at home. So I was just getting in trouble everywhere I went at, from 12 to about 14 years old. And that's the troubles I went through at school as well, because as I said, I thought I was going to make it as a footballer. So school to me wasn't really on the top of my list. I didn't really, I don't know how bad it sounds, but really care about school when I was a teenager, growing up in school, or wanted to be a footballer. So go back today, I got released, and then obviously everyone knew. I went back to school, and I felt like I was just teachers were laughing at me. And within 3 months of me getting kicked out of, 3 months of me getting released from Arsenal, I got kicked out. They excluded me. So it wasn't a case of just suspending me. They had no one to call up and say Bradley's misbehaving, punish him. No Arsenal to do. So got rid of me. So in year 9, I got suspended from school. So not suspended. I got kicked out of secondary school at year 9, and that as well, been having that rejection and then getting out of school, I was just lost. I was nowhere. I wasn't doing nothing. I lost interest in football. My heart weren't in football no more, and I was just lost. Got kicked out of school, and then I ended up going to Waltham Forest College for a year. After that, doing a sports college course, and then just growing up in East London, I found in with my friends. So I was on our estate, just as you do, hanging around with your friends and getting up to no good. That's where I found comfort, being on the estate and hanging around with my friends. And I got caught up in the wrong stuff. And maybe I was about a year and a half after getting released from Arsenal, with all me being on the street and hanging around in my estate, I got caught up in the wrong stuff. I wouldn't say gang stuff, I'd never say I was in a gang, but we were just friends from the estate. People relate to kids growing in the estate, they're called. But to me, we were just a group of me, stay, hung around with each other, and I ended up getting stabbed at 16 in my legs because obviously growing from everyone knew who I was, Bradley Johnson, footballer, and I got rushed by boys from another who knew who I was because we all grew up in the same area, we went to the same school, and I ended up getting stabbed in my legs at 16, and it was only from then, that it was a wake up call for me. Really, I knew I didn't want to go down that path, so my wake up call, me getting stabbed at 16, really woke me up, and obviously it scared my mum and dad. My dad wasn't happy, and he sort of, after that stabbing, he just sort of sat me down and said, "Listen, you got a choice to make now. What do you want to do?" Because at the time that was after I finished Waltham Forest. I enrolled in a carpentry course, doing carpentry apprenticeship in carpentry, and I went to Deptford College.
Okay.
Doing that. Where the DLR station, Deptford Bridge. That college there. Yeah, that's where I've done my apprenticeship in carpentry. So I was doing that 3 days a week and trying to get a job. So I was going to Greenwich Jobs Finders Centre to try and find work, because most of the boys on the course were doing 3 days college and 2 days work, but I couldn't find the work. So with them 2 days where I weren't working, I was just with my friends, as I said, on the estate, just hanging around. So after that happened, it was a case of, listen, what do you want to do now? Because this ain't the life that you want to have or anything. You've got a talent at football. Do you want to go? Like, get your head down and go for it. And at the time, I was playing football at the time. I was playing for Forest at the time, but again, it was a case of I was only going training when I could be bothered. Be like, oh, I'm staying here. I'm not going training today. So I wasn't really taking it serious. But when that happened, my dad sat down with the coach at the time, who was Dave Muir, and he said to him, "Look, can you help?" And even Dave, he was upset with the way that happened, because he knew that I had a talent in football and I was throwing it away, really. So he said, "Yeah, look, when Bradley's fit and he's got his head screwed on, he can come back to the team and we can try and get him a trial somewhere." And I remember it took me 2 months to get back fit. So I come back after the stabbing. 2 months after that, I was able to train and went back training with Waltham Forest. And broke into the first team. Waltham Forest at 16 or 17, broke into the first team there, and I played a few games in the Ryman's League there. And Dave spoke to a few contacts that he knew, and he knew someone at Cambridge. And then he said to me, "You can go down Cambridge for a trial." So he sent me and another boy who played for Waltham Forest down to Cambridge for a trial. I went there for a week. And then they invited me back for another week, and then made a decision. They said that they got me and my dad. My dad come up, and I remember Ricky and the coach said to my dad, said, "Look, we can't, but we can give you £20 a week expenses for bringing him up, and we can put him up in digs in Cambridge. So he'll be living with the team, but he won't be getting paid. He'll be on a non-contract basis, but we'll give you expenses." And then it wasn't even a case of my dad asking me, "What you want to do?" My dad said, "This is it. Like, this is your chance. This is your chance. You're going to be living up in Cambridge. You're going to be out of London. You're not going to have no distractions with your friends and wanting to go here and there with your friends. You can concentrate on football. Go up there, live in a house that they put on for you, and train every day with the club." I've done that. And then within that 6 months that I was there, I think I joined just before Christmas. So I went there and I was in the youth team at the time, living with the whole youth team at the time. Lived in one house, and one lady looked after us all. So there's 22 lads in one house, and that was challenging as well. Coming from East London, as we said there about London boys going out of London, coming from East London and going to live in a house with 22 other boys of different age. I found that hard. I went up there and, kids didn't know me or stuff. And it was a case of, why do you dress like that? Why do you talk like that? And, that's the problems that I dealt with as well. And going into football, which is, I understand now, it's a ruthless, the changing rooms are ruthless. So I went into Cambridge and they had jobs. And like, I remember my first week there, they do, which I know is in football now. I understand it, appreciation, songs and dancing. And I went there my first week. They said, you got to sing for us on Friday. And I was like, what do you mean sing? And it's like, yeah, you got to sing for a minute. I was like, there's no chance I'm singing. He's like, yeah, you got to sing and you got to dance. And I was like, I ain't dancing. I'm coming here to play football. I'm not a performing monk. I'm not coming here to perform for you. Like, get it. So that me about get the football banter. The banter in football is on another level. And I understand now, being a 17-year-old lad coming from East London, up Cambridge, some of the things that went on, I wasn't used to. And my first reaction was to actually say something or fight back. And, I found that hard in the first 2 months, but I got used to it. But I think in 6 months, I broke into the first team. And I think that's what helped me as well, coming from London. And obviously what happened to me before that sort of helped me as well, because, as I said, I look back at that now and say it was a blessing for me happening to me. I know how it sounds now, knife crime in London now is getting out of hand. But what happened to me really woke me up. I could have went one of two ways. I could have went down the route of, I'm going to get them back and retaliate, which is common now in London. Or I could have took the route that I did and seen it as a positive upside and something to drive me on to get to where I am. And I took it that way. So I sort of went there, I had that mentality and sort of, not attitude, I've never said I worked an attitude, the attitude I had that I wanted to work hard and if I didn't agree with something at such a young age, I spoke up and I said it, whereas some lads wouldn't say it. And the younger lads, like the youth team, didn't like that I spoke up. But when I went into the first team in the first team environment, I just saw it as 11 players. I didn't really see it as, they're the first team, and I was scared to walk around them. If, like, for instance, we were cleaning boots for 17, and it was a thing, cleaning boots, cleaning out change rooms, cleaning toilets, which, it sounds stupid now, but stuff like did go on. And when I got told I had to clean the toilet, 17, again to the coach, I said, I'm not cleaning the toilet. I'm there to play football. I'm not cleaning toilets. But that was part and parcel of growing up in football. You had to do things, and like cleaning boots. I remember I was on someone's boots. I don't know what the player was, and he went out for training, and I just cleaned boots as I did. I didn't know you had to dry them and stuff. They were soaking wet, and he come into the change room and he had a go at me in front of everyone. So what the is it? My boots soaking wet. What do you think you're doing? And I was like, well, if you want to dry them, go and dry them. I said, I'm only there to clean them. But that was just me coming from where I come from. That's how I was. But I felt that I got respect doing that because I wasn't scared of anyone. And I thought when I trained with the first team, I was never scared. There's a ball there to be 1 or 50-50 tackle. I'd go in and everyone would be like, oh, look at this young kid, 17, and he's smashing the first team players. And when I see kids come through now and they've got that, I love that about them. They're not scared. They out there express themselves. That's how I was, and I think that's what the first team manager liked. He took a shine into me. I had that rawness about me, and I didn't care who I was playing against. It could be in the youth team, it could be with the first team. Still, the exact same way. It was Hervé Renard, a French guy, and he took a liking to me. So within the first 4 months of being there, I broke into the first team. So I started with them every day now. And then I made one appearance for the first team within that 6 months. And that year they went down, I think from League Two, they got relegated. And I was in the first team, but I was on contract. So at the time, breaking into the first team at such a young age, I had interest from other clubs, and it was a case of before the season ended, Ricky Duncan, the coach, who I've got a lot to thank, and I'll never forget what he'd done for me. He was the youth team coach at the time, and he come up to me and said, "Look, listen, Southend and Northampton are interested in you." And I said, "Okay." And he was like, "But the club don't know." And I was like, "All right, so what's going to happen?" He was like, "I don't want to get him in trouble for this," but he goes to me, "What we'll do is you go weekend and say you're real week, and then you can go down to Southend and train, and then come back, and then a week later we'll do the same. Say you're ill again and go to Northampton." So I've done that. Pretended I was ill. Went down to Southend, trained there for a week and enjoyed it. Come back to Cambridge, said I was ill. Went to Northampton, went down there for a week, and they both offered me contracts, and I ended up in Northampton at the time. Again, it wasn't even about the money at that time, you know. As I said, I was on a non-contract basis, so I wasn't earning any money at 17. I was playing there for free, and both Southend and Northampton offered me contracts. Southend offered me actually more money at the time, but Northampton offered me a flat to live in Northampton, whereas if I signed for Southend, I'd have to live at home again, go back to London. And at that time, I'd grown up and I said, "Listen, I don't want to go back to London," to my dad. And my dad said, "Yeah, I don't want you to come back to London. So to Northampton, because they're going to give you a flat in Northampton and you're going to be in the first team, you sign your first professional contract." So we done that. I chose to go to Northampton and they gave me a flat to live in. And I signed my first professional deal at 17, 18 at Northampton.
Nice, that is class. And it's so interesting because even through some of those early experiences that you mentioned, like, yeah, even just like myself coming from London, I resonate so much to some of those things, like even in terms of wanting to kind of not even just impress the elders, but you know, when there's like an older person in you, number one, you're wanting to like take them on if you're playing football, you're wanting to take them on because you're kind of wanting to show them a little bit about what you have within you. As well, when you're, like you said, kind of when someone tells you to do something, it's like you say, it's not attitude, it's just a sort of responsive action that is kind of ingrained into you almost. And like,
yeah, it's just like growing up, because if I was out in the shop or out on the road walking and someone told me to do something and I didn't like it, I'll tell them there and then. It's like, for me in football, it's no different. I'm still a human being. Like, if you respect me, I'll respect you, and that's how I've been brought up. Respect your elders, obviously, but you know, if someone shows you respect them back, and that's the way I've been my whole life. So, and again, I see it now in where I've been out of London, and you see London boys come up on trial. But I'm talking about young kids now, and people call it attitude. It's not attitude.
Yeah, no.
It's not attitude. It's just, you know, different upbringings and different teachings of moral respect, and you know. I think back in the day, like a few years ago, that was frowned upon in football. But I think it's changing now, where you see a lot of younger coaches and they start to understand the young lads. Because as we just touched on before in the conversation, you don't know what these young kids are going through. You know, coming from broken homes, you know, mum has to bring up 4 or 5 kids at one time, and they're on themselves, going to training by themselves and stuff like that. So coaches didn't really understand that back in the day, but I think football's changing now and it's getting a lot more modern. You see coaches really taking their time with kids, which is good, and that's something that I really want to do as well, and that's why I've done my coaching badges, and I really want to get into it because I can feel I can relate to some of these young lads who are going through that sort of them problems.
Yeah, 100%. And I think life is so important to go through with all of these experiences. Like when I talk to coaches and I talk to players nowadays, I always say to them, like, strip back the football for a second. Like, who are you as an individual? Like, what key skills do you have? Like, what's your communication like? What's your building relationships element like? You know, how can you take things like rejection and can you bounce back from it? And I think, like, even you mentioned about the PE teacher at the time, like, to one extent, from like an education point of view, I can see why they've kind of gone to the Arsenal and said, like, you know, Bradley's misbehaving, and because that's what you enjoy. So typically teachers think like, oh, let's take away the thing that they enjoy. But from an other side of things, looking at it from coaching and just from a life aspect, as you mentioned before, that's your outlook. Like, why would they take away something which is what you're flourishing in, you enjoy? Like, Do you know what I mean? There's a different way in which it can be brought around. And similar to like you said about the coach Ricky, when actually he's seen the problem. The problem is that you've got two teams that potentially want you, but the club Cambridge don't know that they want you. So rather than him just thinking, do you know what, like forget it, like I'll work for this club and we'll ignore the other two clubs. He's actually found a way to actually help you through that. And I think that's so important because I don't know obviously what his upbringing was, but he's obviously seen something within you where he's wanted to put the time and effort into helping you make those decisions.
And that's why I said I've got a lot of respect for him, because he put a lot of time into me. He, when I was through the problems that I had, I found it hard even with the kids, of the banter or I didn't see why I had to do all the jobs. He would sit me down and say, look, listen, Brad, like this is the way it is. Like, I know, I understand, but you will get it and stuff. And he took time, and that's a big thing now. As you said there, understanding, stripping back all the football, understanding what are you like as a human being, because I said I've got a lot of respect for him for doing that, and that's my experiences that I've gone through is only driving me harder now to become a coach and help the younger generation come through.
Yeah, no, that's class. And just kind of touching on the football element of it and kind of mixing with the coaching, what is that coaching like that you received when you went into more of a first team environment? Because obviously, like you said, you had the chance to be at Arsenal for 5 years, and we all know what Arsenal have produced in terms of young players and the quality of like coaching and education that they're giving there. So what was it like being there and the coaching you received to then obviously going into first team environments, but we're talking so many different levels, League Two, League One, Championship, even when you go into the Premier League as well. How does that change?
It is hard and I understand the element from the coach and the manager as well. It's hard for them because their job is so much high pressure. They really ain't got time to sit there and get to know every single player. So I can understand that. But, I think growing up, I've had managers who, listen, I get on with really well. And I've had managers that I didn't get on with. And that's just life. And I've said that before. I've said that to many young kids when I speak. Life is about opinions. Some people are going to like you and some ain't. It don't mean it's to the end of the world just because one person don't like you. But from a manager's point of view and coach's point of view, it is hard because football is such a high pressure sport. It's a results driven business. They haven't got time to really sit down with every single individual and get to know them. But it's just them little moments, when just noticing someone, I could notice in someone energy. If they walk in my room right now, I could notice if they're happy or if they're sad. And, if someone's coming into training and their energy's a bit off, I've had coaches before where they're coming, Brad, what's up? What's the matter? And, it's like a pressure off of you because no one knows what goes on behind closed doors. Like when you leave the training ground, no one knows what goes on. So for me, if I was a manager or a coach and, coming into that environment, I'll make my environment like a happy place to be. And, if someone comes in and look at it down, it only takes 30 seconds, a minute to have a little chat with them and see if they're okay. And then if something is bigger, then you sit down after and say, but it is high pressure for managers nowadays because it's such a result-driven business where they haven't even got time to think for themselves, let alone think about 24 other players. So I can understand how hard it is. And that's why I'm not sitting here and saying I'm never going to be a manager because maybe I would like to do that. But my main focus now, is coaching because when I was at Derby, I went in to do the under-12s and under-15s and loved every minute of it, and I was going in training in the morning at the club on a Tuesday, and then I was coming back at 4:00 in the evening and doing the under-12s, and training was finishing by 7:00. But I was there till about 9:00, talking to some of the kids, talking to their parents, and getting to know them, and I really enjoyed that. So I can understand where players can get to a stage where they think the manager ain't speaking to them or stuff because. I understand that it's a hard job for managers nowadays because, the pressures of social media and everything around, just gets on top of managers. But for me, I feel I'm an approachable person and I feel I'm a good reader of a person. So if someone walks past me, and I think I can tell if there's something wrong with them. And I'm always welcoming, I'm always easy to chat to, and I'll always make conversation with someone. And, I learned that for the 8 months I was coaching at Derby, getting to know these kids. And again, you don't know what goes on. Other kids, in their life, coming from different homes, coming from different schools and stuff like that. So I feel my experiences in life where I've grown up and the stuff I've been through, I'm relatable to a lot of kids growing up.
Yeah, 100%. And it's crazy as well, because all the things that you're mentioning, like, don't get me wrong, you can go through coaching qualifications, you can, understand or know the game. But what you're mentioning there is just human instinct and, being able, like you said, to be able to relate to people. And the problem is, I say to so many coaches, they always get, and like you said, it's a results-driven business, so I get it, but they get so stricken up on technical, totally forget about psychological corners and social corners, which in my eyes are the driving force to which will help you perform those technical outcomes.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I've had managers before where some might not think, like fans might not think they're a good manager, but I don't want a good manager. I just want someone who to respect me, and and I've had managers who are great with the lads, get on with the lads like they're your mate, and I've had the best time on them sort of managers because they're just normal people. And I've had managers who are just on football, they don't care, they'll drop you, they won't speak to you, they don't understand what you're going through, they don't want to sit down and see how you are, they'll just drop you, not tell you, and just leave you out to dry. And that's the worst. People think, oh, mate, I've always said that good managers are the ones who sit down and take time out to get to know you and just have good human skills, human qualities of just.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, just being able to communicate with people is just being able to communicate is one key thing. And when you went into coaching, because like, again, when I've coached younger children, I've coached people from like 5 years old all the way up to, adulthood and, total different ability levels. How did you find like having to, and I say come down to their level? What I mean by that is, dealing with a group of, say, for example, 12-year-olds, because although even though we think, we're coaching in football, and we are, but, at the age of 12, like you said, some of the experiences that you went through, they're going through that. Some of them are thinking, do I even want to be here? Am I here because of parents? And how do you find dealing with just different age groups?
That it was tough. It was tough, but I enjoyed it because it was challenging. And, I love challenges. My whole life I've been challenged, but I enjoyed that, going back to coaching the under 12s. I wouldn't say they were hard. When I done at Derby, I done the under 12s and the under 15s, and I'll tell you this now. So when I went into I was at Derby, I was still playing for Derby. Yeah. So all the kids knew who I was. When I went into the under 12s dressing room on a Tuesday night, I'd walk in, I'd say, "You right, boys?" And they'd be like, "Oh, Bradley, high five, how you doing?" And all that. And I'd touch every one of them. And I'd go back in on a Thursday night, go into the under 15s, and I'd be, "You right, boys?" And they'd be like, or on their phones. You know what I mean? And I had to understand that they're going through that teenager, they don't want to be the kid who sucks up to the coach or, "Hi, Bradley," because all their friends will take the mick out of them, and, they're on their phones on social media and that. And I learned a lot within that 8 months of coaching. I learned so much and I enjoyed it. And again, coaching the under 12s, I had to strip everything back. I had to go put my mind as in I was one of them.
Yeah.
Forget what I've done and I'm a professional footballer. I know how to play football. You have to go into that. And, 3 things that I learned coaching them is some people can understand stuff by speaking. Some people you have to show, and then some people you have to show and speak. So there was kids there who I would say, "Listen, lads, this is what we're doing this drill, 2 touch here, 1 touch here," and they'd get it like that. But then some kids will struggle, and then the kids who will struggle, the kids who got it will be like, "Oh, come on, you don't know what you're doing," and they'll feel small. So everything, I learned that, and I loved learning it because, sometimes I had to stop the session and say, right, and demonstrate it to them and talk them through it, go through it slowly. And where some kids I just have to say it once to them and they'll get it. But then you understand that not every kid's the same. some kids want to see it rather than hear it from your mouth. So you had to, and I loved doing that in coaching, learning that stuff. And then obviously the higher you go, obviously the ability changes with the 15s. It was a lot easier, but you had to deal with that side of things with the 15s where I'd ask the group a question. If I was with the under 12s, I'll ask them a question. They'll all put their hands up and want to answer because they're under 12s, they're enthusiastic and they want to speak to me. But if I ask a question to the group of 15-year-olds, one or two will put their hand up because the rest didn't want to look like the teacher's pet or sucking up to me and stuff. So you had to deal with that, and I enjoyed that. And at Derby, there was a kid there who, reminded me of myself. Had that not attitude, but he had something about him. He knew he was good. He was better than everyone else, and he was one of them kids that you had to take time with and sit down and talk to him. But I didn't want to spend too much time with him because then the other lads would think I'm not spending much time with them. So it's a case of learning how to deal with these kids, and I enjoyed that. And the kid that I'm talking about was Liam Delap, and he's gone on now to play at Man City. And I had many times where he was getting in trouble at school and at the club. Again, with him, his school was calling up the club, and just things like that do go on in the club. The coach was telling me, "Oh, can you have a word with him?" I sat him down and I said, "Listen, like, you remind me of myself. I know what you're going through." He thought everyone was against him, the world was against him, and he was just one of them who just loved football, and he was an unbelievable player. And he's gone to Man City now, and he's played for the first team at Man City, and he's only 17 now. So, yeah, them things I loved learning. I loved going in coaching and doing different age groups, and that's why I'm more towards now when I finish going back into coaching kids and then maybe working my way up into adults.
Yeah, no, that's class. And even that example there, it shows why we need people like yourself, people who have come from, we said, typical areas where there has been challenges along the way, because ultimately you're going to get people who are like that as well, and you can relate to them, you can help them through that. And like you said, he's gone obviously on to do some fantastic things. How do you find, because one of the big things for me is, especially when I started doing full-time coaching, I'll be honest with you, I had to stop watching football for a little bit because I'm watching games and I can't enjoy the game. I'm watching it and I'm analysing every single thing that's going on. And funny enough, when I spoke to Stuart Downing, he said that when he's on the bench now, like before he'd wait until he comes on, but he said now he's watching every single thing that's going on, analysing what player A is doing, what player B is doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, what move they're going to do next. How do you kind of switch off or go from player to then coach? And can you kind of just enjoy a game and rather than analysing absolutely everything that's going on?
It is hard. It is very hard. And I'm the same now. I sit with Stewie and I'm on the bench quite a bit now, getting old. But we sit on the bench and we do the same. You do analyse. And it didn't, I only thought like this after I've done my badges. So before I've done my badges, I would not think of anything like this. But even going away and doing my badges, coming back to football, I was at Derby when I'd done my badges. So coming back, I never knew the planning that goes into doing a session. Yeah. So I just thought, I'm a player, I'll turn up on the Monday, 10 o'clock, train at 10:30, go out there, the coach puts a session on, we do it and go home. But doing my badges, I understand the planning that goes into the session before and everything. Like, say, for instance, they're planning for the game on the Saturday. On Tuesday, you do technical stuff for the game, so you do phases of the play. I did not understand any of that before I done my badges, so it was a real eye-opener for me. And stuff with, like, little things like numbers. Like, for me, when I go into the under-15s, like, I'll speak to the coach before I went in. I said, right, what are we doing tonight? And he'd be like, we're doing midfielders breaking into the boxes. So I'll go home and I'll say to him, how many we got in tonight's session? And he'd be like, we've got 16 kids. So I'll go home, do a session, write up a session plan. I'd come in at 5 o'clock and only 9 kids will turn up. And I'll be like, it's killed my whole session. And you have to adapt. And, that's something I enjoyed as well. But before I'd done my badges, I didn't think of anything like that. So now watching games, I'm analysing it. I'm thinking, like, you can see build up play and you can see teams' movements, what they're trying to do, and I can understand it. Sitting watching a game is easier than playing it because being on the pitch and doing it, you can't see things as quick because you can't see over there or you can't see over there. But when you're watching a game, you can see it. And yeah, being at home, people ask me that all the time. Do I love football and do I sit at home and watch it? And I don't sit there. I wouldn't watch normal games. I'll only watch the big games like Champions League and obviously I'm an Arsenal fan, so I try and watch Arsenal. But I wouldn't sit there and watch games. I've got kids of my own. I've got 3 kids, so they keep me busy at home. But I'm not one of these people who are religiously watching football and stuff like that. There are times you do need a break from it. I'm training every single day, and it's good to get a release, and my kids give me that. But yeah, I understand what you're talking about now. When I'm sitting on the bench at a game, I am like analysing and I'm sitting there thinking, Gaffer do this, Gaffer do that, which thinking what I would do if I was a manager, change this, change that. But you can say it as a player. But yeah, I do analyse it, and I think that's benefiting me now that I'm getting older. Like I can't run around as much as I can, so I read the game a lot more. And I think me doing my coaching badges, that has helped me a lot. Like reading games, because I can see like patterns of play. They're all the same. All managers try and do the same thing. So when you're coaching and that, you try and do it. And I think the older players can see it a lot quicker than these younger players now. But the younger players have just got the legs to get there rather than us.
Yeah, no, 100%. Would you have done it any earlier if you could have? Because, like, in my eyes, I always say when I talk to, especially when I'm mentoring coaches, I'm kind of saying, look, technically, if you're doing a really good coach, not only are you producing a player, but you're technically also producing the next crop of coaches, because you're giving them the knowledge, the information. They're obviously the decision makers, but you're giving them so much game understanding. And like you said, obviously, through having the badges, it's a little bit easier to understand maybe why things are like this and how things are happening or potentially reading it. Yeah, would you have done it any earlier if you could have?
Yeah, definitely. And, I'm saying I've done it. It fell on me by chance. Something I wasn't even thinking about. Being young in football, you don't think about that. You don't think about, you're going to finish and what you're going to be after. Like at 21 years old, 22, if you ask me what I'm going to do when I finish, I'll be like, I've got loads of years left. I ain't thinking about that now. And that does happen. And, football nowadays is so, I speak about high pressure. When people see other people doing stuff outside of football, it sort of gets frowned upon and stuff like that. So I can understand why kids don't do it, but I wish I'd done it earlier. And it fell on me, I was at Norwich with Gary O'Neill, and he was coming to the end of his career, and he wanted to be a manager. He's number 2 at Bournemouth now, but it was only one summer. Because I speak to him and he knows my situation. My wife was pregnant at the time, so we couldn't fly anywhere in the summer. And he said to me, "Look, Brad, I'm going to do my badges. Do you fancy coming?" He said, "I know you're not going on holiday. You're going to be in Derby all summer. Do you fancy coming away and doing your badges?" And I just said to him, "Yeah, I'll do it." And it wasn't something I looked forward to. I remember going there and I'd done mine in Belfast in Ireland. We went out there. I've never done, because I didn't do a YT anywhere, I've never done no level 2 coaching, which they do in YT. So I've never done anything, never taken a session in my life. And he was like, "Do you want to come? It'd be, we're going there for 2 weeks." And I just thought, I'll get away from the missus and the kids for 2 weeks. I couldn't go on holiday there. So I went with him. And I remember going into the hotel, and I'd done my badges when I was 28, 27. And I walked into the hotel, and I was the youngest player there at 28. And I remember walking in there and sat down in the reception. There was Wes Brown, Richie Wellings. There was so many older pros who I played against. And I said to Gaz, "Have we got to coach them?" And he went, "Yeah." And I bricked it. I was shitting myself. I was so nervous. And then we went out. Obviously, we went out the first day, and they sort of put you on the spot. The coach, the tutors out there say, "Listen," and I was confident. I've, as I said to you before, I feel I'm confident. I can speak out. I've been a captain at every club I've been at, so I feel I've got that presence in the changing room where if I need to say something, say it, and I'm confident enough to speak up in the changing room. Yeah. But the tutor said, "Listen, you think you can play in and coach in are 2 different things," and I tell you not, I kid you not. The first thing that I done when I went out there and they gave that whistle and they said, "Take the session," I froze. I couldn't speak. I shit myself. I was so nervous. But then, the more you do it, the more you get used to it in anything in life. And it was refreshing to see that I wasn't the only one. You know, Wes Brown, when he was doing the session, he was feeling the exact same I was. And I was looking at him thinking, Wes, you've won Premier League, you won Champions League, and that don't matter. It does not matter what you've done in your career. And that's why I always, like, you know, everyone says, he should be a good manager because he was a good player. It don't mean nothing. What you've done in your football career, going into management, it's a total different career. And you know, yeah, it was something that fell upon me. But if I could have done it earlier, I definitely would have, knowing what I know about it now. And I encourage young players now to do it, because you see the game from a total different perspective. And you know, for me now, when I was out there doing it, I said I was the youngest out there. All the players and the people out there had been offered jobs in football, but they didn't have the qualifications, so they went out there to try and do it. And they were all saying to me, look, it's good that you're doing it so young, because you can just walk into a job now and make that transition so easy. And I look at it like that, thinking like I can, whenever I finish, or hopefully I've got a few more years left in me, but I haven't got a rush and think, oh, I've got to go and do my coaching badges, where a lot of people, a lot of players come to the end of their career and they don't know what they're going to do. And then they say, oh, let me go and get my coaching badges. And then they got another 2, they got to start from the bottom. Whereas, you know, I think I'm in a good position now where I've done my badges while I'm playing, and then gone into Derby and coached the under-12s and under-15s while I was still playing. And I think that's helped me massively now. And I'd say, yeah, for younger players to definitely look into if that's something they want to do. From my experience, I did not want to do it. If you asked me at 24, 25, do I want to be a coach, I would have said no. But, you know, getting older now, having kids and coming towards the end of my career, you know, football's all I know. So, and like I said there, I've been through a lot in my life, and if I can help 1 or 2 kids, I think that's something that I definitely want to do. So I feel I can relate to a lot of these kids, and you know, I want to give my experiences back to these kids and hopefully be a good coach.
Yeah, no, 100%. I totally agree with you. And it's interesting you mentioned the thing about, like you said, you freeze automatically, because number one, it's either when you're dealing with younger children, because even though we're older than them, you know, we know what goes on in their heads. We know what they're probably thinking, looking at us. And not only that as well, but like you said, I think you said about also that Wes Brown, and like you said, he throws as well. And it goes back down to, you know, I know so many coaches who are typically so loud. And when it comes to me, I'm quite reserved, I'm quite quiet. But then when I come into a coaching field, you know, I come into my own. And what I find quite interesting with that is, again, it goes back down to the personal characteristics and skills. Like those loud ones, they can talk, but they can't listen and they can't communicate. So that's where they then get stuck, because typically they can't communicate what they want the players to actually do. They can't communicate or hear what the players are actually telling them or showing them. And that's where I think, yeah, like you said, it kind of, when you take things away again, it really boils down to you as an individual. And I think where you've been able to do the different age groups, and you've also had no experience doing it. And like you said, you'll carry on playing for another couple of years and still probably get experience whilst you're still playing. Then going into that, you've had so much experience over the coach who just goes away and get it, or the player goes away and get it after they finish. Yeah. Is one thing, but having that experience is something totally different, because you can then use those experiences and put those different decisions in different scenarios, because you've been in those situations and those scenarios almost.
Yeah, and the thing as well is with that is that, you know, if I've got in my head now, if I do it now, I can make my mistakes with the young kids. I can make my mistakes with them and learn from it. You know, I'm not gonna, when I've done a session with the under-12s, I've lost a session. Like in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, this session's gone wrong, but they don't know any different. Yeah. So it's about hiding and adapting to thinking how I can get this session back on rolling now. But, you know, that's learning and making mistakes. The kids don't understand. They just think, oh, the session's going on. They don't understand. Whereas if you went into a first team environment and done that and you froze, you're thinking, oh crap, they click onto it straight away, and then that's when you lose it. So I think for me, that's why I want to get in it so early, is that I can make my mistakes now, and then, you know, years down the line, I will feel confident enough that I've done all my practice work and I've made all my mistakes. Whereas when I'm old enough now, you know, I can deal with it.
Yeah, I'm saying it's interesting that you made that point as well about, like, you know, like you said, the under-12s, and it's true that they're just there to play football. But I always say now, like, obviously, similar to your experiences where you got into a team late, and me, I didn't even start playing for a team until I think I was about 13 years old. And I think to myself, by now, by about the age of 10 years old, players are almost more experienced than the coaches in terms of knowledge that they have. Obviously, coaches understand where, when, how to use it, but players have had so many different coaches, football, different sports, different settings, so grassroots, recreational, academy potentially. They know so much. And like you said, you've got to be so careful because there's been times where I've had to like maybe speak a bit slower because if I talk too fast and I say something which the players go, that ain't true, or why are you telling us that? They'll pick up on it. And that sounds silly, but you'll lose them. You'll lose a player straight away. And then, you know, it's that element of trust. So it's crazy how much they know at such an early age now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And it's funny you say that because I remember my first training session. We did on the 12 still. We done the session and the coach after said, "Oh, Brad, have you got anything to say?" And he put me on the spot and I didn't know what to say. And I was thinking, and I looked around and I could tell one of the kid or a few of the kids were looking at me thinking, "Oh, he's nervous. He don't know what to say." And I said, "Oh, just well done, lads, and got on with it." And I can see them giggling to themselves, like thinking, "Oh, he's nervous" or stuff like that. But they do pick up on it. But again, for me, I said in my head, that's where I'm going to make my mistakes now. So later on down the line, I'll get over them.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's definitely an interesting field, and yeah, I think it's definitely advisable for any players to go into coaching and just get those experiences. Really, in terms of your whole career, so like you've had a really interesting journey, but a really successful journey because, like you said, you've had challenges along the way. You haven't let it stand in your way. You've come back up into the game when a lot of people, let's be honest, will probably turn around and say, "Do you know what? No, this isn't for me. Too much has happened." But like I said, you've gone on to do some incredible things with your journey, and especially like you said, even now, still playing at the highest of levels. For you, has there been like a standout moment where you've gone, "Do you know what? Like, I'm proud of myself for achieving this particular thing," or has it just been a collective of, the whole journey really?
No, look, I'll be lying if I sat here and didn't say that when I got bought for money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I've never in a million years did it. After what I've been through, getting released at 15, thinking my football career is finished. Never in a million years did I think I'll be getting someone to be buying me for money. So I remember my first move from Northampton, Leeds paid 250 grand for me, and it was just I was sitting there and I remember driving up in the car. And my dad was like, "They paid 250,000. Do you know how much money that is?" And I was sitting there thinking, "No, I don't know." I was oblivious to it. And my dad was like, 250? That's $250,000. They've paid that much for you. And I was like, he was so proud. And then I think 6 years later to get bought for £6 million. Yeah, it was real like moment for me. It wasn't a moment where I thought, "Oh, this is it, I've made it." It was just one of the moments where I thought, never in a million years did I think this would happen to me, and it's happened. But it don't happen by luck. All the hard work that I've had to put into to get to where I am. I remember before I got bought from Norwich to Derby, I had an unbelievable season at Norwich. Scored 15 goals. Was in the promoted team. Got promoted back to the Premier League. So all that hard work, and it's kind of like pat yourself on the back. Not you've made it, but you've done something, you've achieved something, get bought for money. Yeah.
No, 100%. Listen, it must be a crazy feeling because I agree with you. I think when you're younger and you're playing FIFA or Football Manager and you're doing these sort of deals and transfers, and then that price tag's being put on your head, it must be a mad feeling. And what's interesting as well, just quickly wanted to pick up on was, again, kind of looking at your whole journey, really. Like you said, obviously that season when you scored, you said 15 goals, you're second top goal scorer in your team. Did that almost bring back flashbacks of you when you used to play striker in your grassroots team? Because scoring goals and, do you know what I mean? That kind of, there must have been a moment where you've been like, yeah, listen, I've done this before almost, but obviously not like, at a much high level.
Yeah, no, it brought back memories because I love scoring goals. Even now, I'm a midfielder. I've been, even when I scored them 15 goals, I was playing left wing, left midfield. I won't say I'm a winger, but I've never played centre forward since I was 11, 10 years old.
Yes.
But I always love scoring goals. So even to this day now, I'm more of a defensive midfielder now, but I still try and score goals. I still try and make the box. And I think a lot of managers I had always said to me, you should score a lot more goals with your left foot, your shooting, and your ability in the air, like crosses. You should score a lot more goals, and that's something that's always been inside me. No matter what position I play on the pitch, I want to score. Every game I go into, I want to score. And there was a point that season in Norwich where I felt going into games, I just felt I'm going to score today. I'm going to score one. I'm going to score two. And it weren't arrogance or cockiness. It's just the confidence I had in myself. I was on a wave. I rode that wave, and I went into every game confident. We had an unbelievable team. So we were winning more games than not. And I felt that every game I went into, I was going to score. And that season was one of the best seasons I've had in my career so far. It was the best. Scoring 15 goals from midfield, getting the team promoted, getting a promotion to the Premier League. It's a season that I'll never forget.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I think, like I said, it's a nice feeling to think that you was able just to play with freedom and just be able to, like I said, it's not arrogance, it's just going into it knowing, do you know what, I'm playing well and I'm comfortable with how I'm playing in terms of manager, creating a good environment, being within a good team, and literally doing what you've probably always wanted to do.
And again, that's what it is. That manager at the time, I take a lot of, again, going back to the coaching thing, doing my badges now. Every club I've been at since then, I take things from managers. So I've got a book at home where I put things not to do and things that I would do. So I take like little clips from what managers have done that I wouldn't do as a manager, or like he might have done something that upset a few of the changing room. And I'm thinking, right, if I'm become a manager or coach, I want to do that. And things that they do that the lads like, buzzing off that, I'll write it down and say, no, this is what he done. Every manager I've had, and I've had a lot of managers in my career, I had a lot of managers at Derby. So every manager I've had now, I take like 3 or 4 things that I wouldn't do or don't like about them, and 4 things that I do like about them. But yeah, going back to that season there, the manager at the time, Alex Neil, he was terrific with the lads. He just gave the lads that freedom, and he weren't like a manager, he was more like your mate. And don't get me wrong, he would give you a bollocking, and he was trying for that. But I think that fear that he drove in us made us not want that bollocking, so it made us drive us on even more. And towards the end of not the end of his era, towards the end of that season, he didn't have to do much in the changing room, because the lads that we had, he installed that into us, and we drove the changing room, we drove the team. So he didn't really have to do much. He'd done the training and all the tactical stuff, but getting everyone G'd up for the game and like getting everyone motivated, he installed that within us, and we just took that upon ourselves before the game to go out there. And I think that was a good trait that he had in him, that motivation trait that he had in himself to get the whole lads on board. And like, he didn't have to do much, because he come in January. I think in his first 2 weeks, he installed that in us, and he didn't have to do much towards the end of the season, because we drove ourselves and we wanted to do the best for ourselves.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's class as well to hear that you, like you said, you're taking note of what you like from managers, what you don't like from managers, because ultimately you've then got the best of both worlds. You've got you as an individual and your personalities, your skills, your traits, your experiences, but then mixing it in almost with like you said, all the things that have worked in the past, all the things that don't work or haven't worked in the past. And I think, that's an ability to be able to have that. And I'll be honest with you, I'm very much like that as well. I'm so old school. Like, I do use iPads, I do use phones, but I write things down in notepads. And I carry this rucksack around with me, and I must have about 6 or 7 different notepads in it. Just one's for like sessions, one's for like observations, one's for like, it gets crazy. But I think it's a good way to keep track of the situations, experiences you face almost.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm like, even now when I'm getting sessions, like everything that you say is technology now. Every training session that we do now is filmed. Like, they've got a drone above us. 5-6 years ago, you wouldn't have ever had a camera on your training pitch. At Derby, we had cameras on every corner of the training pitch. So you could just go to the analyst and say, "Can you send me that session on a hard drive?" And they'll put it on a USB for you, and you've got the session there. But I like to write stuff down. So even when I was getting sessions off the analyst at Derby, I'd watch it, and I'd write it all down. You can't just watch a session and think, oh, I'm going to go and do that, because you don't know the measurements of cones, stuff like that. I'm getting boring now with coaching stuff like that, but measurements of possessions, like you go out there and you think, oh, I'm just going to do this, and then you put the players on there and it's not big enough, or it's too small, or it's too big. I like that, and I like to write stuff down. So I've got, you said about a notebook, I know about that. I've probably got it in my bag here, my coaching sessions, that I'll write all of them down, all of them.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And even the stuff that you mentioned there, do you know what? To every external person who doesn't like coaching, they say, oh yeah, like you said, it's boring. What are you going on about? Measurements? Like, it gets ridiculous. For me as well, when it comes down to like OCD of having certain colours of cones, and it's crazy. Coaching's a crazy world. But no, listen, Bradley, it's been absolutely fantastic getting to know about your story, your journey. Listen, I don't say this lightly when I say you're an inspiration to a lot of people. And so I ain't never going to make it to football. I'm way too old. But even myself, like, just hearing your story is so inspirational, motivational to a lot of people, players and coaches as well. Because, there's one thing, players going into coaching and that happens, and that's fine. That's not a problem at all. But even just the passion you have behind coaching is clear to see. And that's something totally different, that, like, you're not just doing it because you think, like, okay, I want to stay in football, but your understanding of coaching industry and your knowledge behind it is incredible. So no, I'm excited to see this. Well, don't stop playing yet.
I've got a few more years in me.
Yeah, but no, I'm excited to see how your coaching journey goes, and I wish you all the success for it. But yeah, massive thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Thank you. And anything that I can help with, I'm always up to help. So if anyone is listening to this and wants to reach out to me, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and I always try and get back to everyone. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed it.
Fantastic. I don't want them to flood your inbox too much, but yeah, get in touch with Bradley, because listen, some of the things he said today has been inspirational, and I think people need more, I'm going to say, mentors like yourself. I think that's the important thing. A lot more people need mentors like yourself, and for you giving up your time today and, like you said, just getting back to people, I think is something which is not done enough. So yeah, I massively appreciate it, Bradley.